Oh, this is a big one, man. I've got a huge problem with Unreal Engine. I do not like Unreal Engine because everybody's using Unreal Engine. Look how good our game looks. Look how pretty our game looks. It's so realistic. But when everything looks realistic, everything looks the same. So here we go. Unreal Engine is killing games from Vex.
Stalker 2. You can see I got like 21 hours in this game. I was originally just gonna make a video on it, just showing the performance and everything. Damn, bro. You can't even get 60 on this card? I don't know about you guys, but nowadays I hear Unreal Engine 5 in a game. I know that the graphics are supposed to be amazing. I just hear, wow, that's gonna be a huge hit to our performance. But as it's kind of gone on, I've been questioning this game entirely. Should this game even be on Unreal Engine 5? We've seen so many games move to it. I mean, I have a whole list here. Witcher 4, CD Projekt Red, you know, they literally have this amazing engine, the Red engine that runs Cyberpunk that looks incredible at times. Halo just did an entire rebrand. They're switching to Unreal Engine.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Halo doesn't look like Halo anymore. They just have some Halo assets that they've created to mimic Halo, and it just looks like an Unreal Engine game.
5. Apparently it's going to be incredible.
Unreal affords us more opportunity than we've ever had in the past.
Halo keeps saying it's going to save their franchise. Tomb Raider switching to Unreal Engine 5.
Yeah, and the previous 2 Halos were trying to save the franchise. Previous 3, 4. Halo 4 was supposed to save the franchise from Bungie not having it anymore.
5, Tekken 8, Yakuza, First Descendant. And let's be honest too, there's been some remakes that are coming out that are UE5 remakes like Silent Hill 2 and Until Dawn. It is a really nice graphical uplift for these games. Are they just basically beta testing the studios using the engine so that their future games can just run using Unreal Engine 5? But it really...
And they all look extremely similar to me, and I dislike that.
Started to get me thinking with Stalker 2 because this is a very beloved franchise. It is extremely immersive. The world interacts on its own and you're merely a person within the world. You're barely even the main character of this story. It's an interesting feeling that not really any games match. I think the only game that's closest to this is an indie game called Rain World. There is just a fully interactive world happening without you touching it at all, and you're just merely a little slug cat in that world. But they chose to put Stalker 2 in Unreal Engine 5, which more and more to this day just becomes more and more generic engine that doesn't feel like it produces anything special. Like a lot of these games nowadays, Unreal Engine 5 games, just feels like slop at this point. So let's really dig into
Honestly, I'm starting to think that everything on the internet is feeling like slop, but sure, yeah.
Stalker 2, because I think this is a perfect example what kind of problems Unreal Engine can have and some of the things that it really does bring to the table to help this game. It's not all bad, all right? It's very important to start off that Stalker is known for its very immersive world building, and having better graphics with Unreal Engine 5 really does help. And I agree that this game does visually look quite impressive. Like, it has flaws.
Yeah, this is the type of game that it's good to have Unreal Engine 5. It makes sense. Games that are like based on real life, that take place in real life settings-ish, you know? Unreal Engine being a realistic engine makes sense. But most of these games that they're using Unreal Engine for don't make sense, and we don't need it. Like Silent Hill 2. Sure, it looks great. Sure, great game, but like, did it have to look realistic? Did it have to? No, it didn't. It could have been stylized and like slightly anime, slightly cartoonish, because it was a Konami game, was it not?
But overall, it really does hold up super well, especially from a smaller-ish kind of studio. The model quality in the game looks good, which takes quite a lot of work from the devs. The lighting quality looks good. The completely dynamic day-night cycle, like a lot of games will have basically pre-baked times of days that are in it, but this has a fully dynamic day-night cycle. All the lighting changes, everything, and all this comes with the real-time global illumination that just makes these environments feel real. I don't think a small studio like this would be able to produce graphics that are in this range without having UE5, or else it would cost them a lot more, and maybe the game would take a stupid amount of time to make, and it would just be unrealistic. And despite all of the, the issues with Unreal Engine 5, it's like, oh, these games just look photorealistic and they have no unique style to them whatsoever. Stalker 2 does have a little bit of a style, this kind of bleak atmosphere. There is a slight, like, artistic style to things. I don't even know how to explain it. It just doesn't feel quite real. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have problems. Like, UE5 does have great graphics, but at the same time, at least to me, a lot of people probably aren't going to notice stuff like this. They're probably...
Yeah, okay. Stalker 2, they tried hard to make it like Stalker. A lot of games do not do that. A lot of games are not focused on that. They are just focused on making it look good and not stylizing it. And that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. Like games that they just want the graphics to be out of the way. They don't want to work on the graphics. They just want it to already be there so they can work on everything else, which I think is bad. It's very bad. Because what's the point of a game being incredible if it's just like every other game that's incredible? Because then they're not incredible anymore. They become mid.
Just to look at it, it's like, that looks a little weird, but I actually know why this happens. But if you look at a lot of the graphics in the game, say like the reflections, well, they look kind of like they're crawling or like they're shifting in space. Like they look really odd. And it's because the resolution of Lumen, the lighting system in Unreal Engine 5, isn't really that high, which means that lighting is pretty noisy. And you can notice this as you go down in resolution. Like you can see here at like 1080p. Well, these reflections don't really look that good. And the reason it looks like it's crawling is because it's a noisy reflection, and then there's a denoising process going on. It tries to take all the speckly bits of noise and try to combine them into a shape that looks normal. But there's also...
And honestly, I'm tired of worrying about the water. I'm tired of hearing about the water. Look how good the water is, and then it doesn't look realistic at all. I'm tired of it. Stop making realistic water. Just make stylized games. I want more style. I'm tired of all this realistic water, and then the water's what breaks everything. Or you go over the water and there's a reflection of like what you're looking at on your HUD in the water, and it makes no sense. Like arcs lighting is terrible. It's awful. And there are so many games that are like that. Just have some Minecraft water. It's just Minecraft water. It's good enough.
Some other issues like with ghosting. I don't find this to be super annoying, but say like you aim up your gun or something, you can see there's a little bit of a ghosted trail, like there's faint images of it before as you lift it up, and that's because...
That's what that's called, like ghosting, is in the water. Like you'll move your gun across the water and you'll see the reflection of your gun in the water, and you're not supposed to see that, or it breaks the lighting effect in the water.
Of Unreal Engine 5, it really relies on this thing called TAA, temporal anti-aliasing. It's not the end of the world in my opinion, but it could be better. But then this is where all the graphics kind of fall apart. I mean, in order to run this game, to run any Unreal Engine 5 game, it's... oh man, you need a lot. You need like a $2,000 PC or something. Or if you think your console actually runs these games well, it does not. The console does not run it well. It's just blurry as hell because they're upscaling from like 720p, maybe less than 720p, just to make it function on a console. I originally was just going to do a performance video, so I tested a ton of graphics cards, and we can see, yeah, it's rough. This game needs like pretty responsive, tight controls in it because you are dealing with AI. You need to react on a dime quite a bit. It's a first-person game. Having higher FPS is extremely important, but it's using Unreal Engine 5, which means good luck trying to get decent performance out of this game. Now, I just want to start off here as a rest in peace to my GTX 1070 graphics card. It's a beloved graphics card. I've had it for a while, but I can't get it to display out like at all when a game starts running. Like it's not working.
That's such a sad thing, man. That was such a good graphics card. That's like when I first started getting into PC gaming. It was the 1070 and 1080.
No. Rest in peace to my boy. But moving on to a like recent mainstream graphics card, the RTX 4060. Let's try this card. It's about $300. And what I found really disappointed me at 1080p on a high settings with the RTX 4060, you couldn't even get 60 FPS. That's rough, guys. I don't know what to say. Like, it's partially because Nvidia didn't make a very good graphics card here, but another part is like, man, this game is really, really hard to run. Want to use a little bit of upscaling, use DLSS quality on high settings at 1080p. Personally, don't think that DLSS quality, which is basic.
I wonder how good this game would look on my PC. They have a demo out, don't they? I might check that out just to see.
I think running at like 720p ish and being upscaled to 1080p, I don't really think it looked that bad, but you can get more than 60 FPS at least. But again, you're not even playing at 1080p on a $300 graphics card. I think that's just really disappointing.
I wonder what it would play on mine, because I'm running a Radeon, I'm running RX 6700 XT. I wonder if that would do any good. On Linux. Also, I'm on Linux.
I mean, Unreal Engine 5 and upscaling. These are like two peas in a pod. You can't have one without the other. You need upscaling. Also, they're starting to rely on frame generation as well in these games because they're so freaking demanding. And if you don't know what frame generation is, it's basically like you have two rendered frames in a game, and then you insert basically a completely generated, interpolated frame in between them to make the game look smoother and feel like you're playing at a higher FPS, but it doesn't impact the latency of a game. Like, the game will actually feel less responsive when you're using frame generation. And that's generally what I found on the RTX 4060 with DLSS frame generation. And you can see up in the upper right corner of the screen, I have a little latency.
This game seems like it's going to be running perfect in about 4 years.
Measure up there, and we're going from like 40 to 50 milliseconds of latency up to like 60 to 70, and I think at that point it gets to be unplayable. Now, I did also try on the 4060 going up to 1440p with DLSS balanced. It gets just below 60 FPS. I don't think it's that bad a lot of the time, but you know, you could drop the settings down to medium and I think you get away with a little bit more here. But sometimes the RTX 4060 just shits the bed. We're cooked right now. Bro, this is atrocious. This feels so bad. And it's because it has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Basically, it's the allotted memory or the RAM that is.
Oh, come on, man. 8 gigabytes? What's that? What is that? Get that out of here. I got 12, I think. I got 12.
Specifically on the graphics card itself. This card only has 8 gigabytes of it, and that can really push the limits. Now, this is pretty much Nvidia like artificially limiting how much VRAM this card has, which really does suck. If you run out of VRAM, things can go really bad in this game. Now, if you do jump up in tier of graphics cards, so the RTX 4070, which I think is actually going for $500 right now, at 1080p with DLSS quality on high settings, just like the 4060 was, you can now get about 100 FPS outside of the town here, which is, wow, that's incredible. Now, if you want to actually play at 1440p on DLSS quality, which is probably how you'd play, you can get about 80 FPS or so, which I think feels pretty smooth.
Oh. Why did that do that? It jumped up in quality. Guess my internet's too fast.
I think it feels quite good. But if you have a absolute metric ton of money to drop on a...
It's because he was displaying 1440, so my YouTube jumped up to 1440. That makes sense.
Graphics card, $1,000. You can get an RTX 4080 Super in this case, which at 4K on DLSS quality, which is like 1440p being upscaled, you can get about 60 to 70 FPS on epic settings. So this is basically maxed out in the game. If you do want to turn on just high settings in the game, then you can get about the 70s in FPS, which I think actually feels pretty good, especially for 4K. But man, you got to pay $1,000 and you're really just scraping by a little bit above 60 FPS, which is crazy. This
I don't know if I'm going to be buying this game for a while. They're going to have to do some fixing, and there's going to have to be some modding. I don't want to buy a game just for it to be sitting there for months and months. I might get it on a sale or something.
This game is very demanding. Like, you would think that this card could handle that. Now, on AMD's side, I did test basically the budget champion graphics card at the moment. This card, the RX 6600, is like $180. Yeah, it kind of struggles like a lot. Now, if you want to play native settings at 1080p on medium, you can only get like 45 FPS.
Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. I think my GPU would work pretty well for this. Because it's the next one up and also the XT.
Yeah, this card can't even really do medium settings. Now, if you want to turn on some upscaling at 1080p, well, you can get about 60 FPS. So upscaling feels like it's necessary. I mean, this isn't a terrible way to play the game. I don't think it looks atrocious. But part of me makes me wonder is like, would I rather just like have slightly worse quality graphics in a game or be upscaling at 1080p? Because upscaling at 1080p just looks even worse. And these games, these Unreal Engine 5 games especially, are just relying so much on upscaling. And for these low-end cards that can only play at 1080p, it looks so bad at 1080p. Like, the next card I tried is the RX 6700, the non-XT one. This is basically the exact same GPU that's in the PS5. So we can really compare it here. For all you guys who think the PS5 is insane. If you want to play at 1080p native on this card, well, you can only get like 45 to 50 FPS high settings on this card. Now, maybe the PS5 drops its quality settings down a little bit. Yeah, that's not great. Now, if you want to play at 1440p on FSR quality, so this is rendering from like 1080p going up to 1440p, you can get about 45 to 50 FPS outside of the town here. If you want to play like the PS5 is, it can't really handle 4K that well. If you want to go to high settings on FSR performance, which is running at 1080p upscaled to 4K, you can get like 30 to 40 FPS outside of the town, which isn't very much. You're not really talking that much performance.
Yeah, I think my GPU would handle this game all right, decently. I think I'd probably pull maybe about 60, 70 FPS with some making it look pretty decent. I'm cool with that.
Performance here, it does not really look that good, all right? But if you do at 4K, if you want to try to achieve higher FPS, then you can go to the low settings and turn on FSR Ultra Performance. I think it's probably 720p-ish, rendering all the way up to 4K. It's insane. It looks really, really bad. But you can technically get 60 FPS at 4K, low settings, rendering from 720p. So for all you say the PS5 can handle this easy, it's not magic. This game, it's Unreal Engine 5, man. Good luck playing it. Now, if you jump up to like a $450 AMD graphics card, the RX 7800 XT at 1440p, if you do...
Oh man, he skipped over mine. What is the XT version gonna do?
Use upscaling, I use TSR at 70% scaling on high settings. You can get like 70, 80 FPS on this card at 1440p. I mean, that's pretty good. I actually enjoy that quite a bit. What I thought was super cool too is on the 7800 XT, I actually tried FSR 3 frame generation. Oh shit. Oh damn, that feels pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's why I stick with AMD, because AMD I think is just better at handling games in general, especially on Linux. Nvidia just sucks on Linux. I just like the AMD cards. I love it. Haven't had any issues at all with AMD.
FSR 3 frame gen feels super good in this game. Like, it just doubles your FPS. It doesn't really affect the latency at all. I see barely any like actual artifacts in the game from using frame generation. I'd actually really recommend using frame generation. You want to get some extra smoother performance. Now, if you're starting below 60 FPS, I probably wouldn't recommend it because your latency will end up getting a little bit too low. Now, if you don't want to try 4K on this this $450 graphics card, 50% resolution scaling, so it's like 1080p upscaled to 4K, you can get like 70 FPS. Now, last card I tested is AMD's, it's like a $650 graphics card now, the 7900 XT, and this is like a 4K graphics card, all right? So you can play 4K, 70% resolution scaling, which is around 1440p upscaled to 4K on high settings, and we can get like 70 FPS. And again, if you turn on frame generation with this card, you can get like 130 to 140 FPS. You like double your frame rate, and it feels great. I don't like relying on upscaling and frame generation, although I think at 4K upscaling makes a lot more sense.
I don't think I've ever used the upscaling or frame generation stuff. I've kind of just been okay with 1080p, 1440p. It hasn't been an issue for me.
So you can't even really tell it's on a lot of the time, so you're not really missing out on that much. But relying on these to get decent performance out of what is a very high-end graphics card, the 7900 XT is very, very fast. Relying on these things, it's like, man, if only Unreal Engine 5 could run better. But what's even scarier than these GPUs, the graphics cards performing in the game, which is kind of the core of a gaming system, is having a good graphics card. What's even scarier here is actually the CPU performance. It is really, really rough, at least as you go into like a town area. If you're running out in the wilderness, it's pretty fine. If you have a pretty decent mid-range CPU like the Ryzen 5600X, which is a very reasonable CPU, you can only get like 50 FPS on the CPU. If you think about it too, like the consoles, even the PS5 Pro, which is older than this one here, which means that the PS5 is going to be performing even worse in these town areas, and there's no way to avoid it. You need a high-end CPU to run this game even at 60 FPS. Could be partly because maybe the devs aren't super experienced with Unreal Engine 5. You have too many NPCs and everything, and the game just runs like shit. That really could.
I have the best CPU of the 5000 series, so my CPU ain't gonna be a problem. I think I'm not gonna have a problem playing this game, actually, other than the bugs that are currently in there, and also the coming patches that are guaranteed to break some stuff.
Would be happening. I'm not 100% sure. And another side is like every time you start up this damn game, you know, shader compilation, where the game goes through and like figures out all the shaders for your system. Every time you start this game, you have to recompile shaders for it. It is so ridiculously slow, and I don't know if this is a mistake by the developers and they don't know how to use Unreal Engine 5 completely, because most games you should just be able to compile shaders once, but for some reason you have to do it every single time you start the game, even on the exact same system. Let's restart the game.
Oh, I mean, I'm on Linux, so my shaders have to compile quite a bit, actually, like every time it updates, which is pretty much every day. So, you know, that's a thing.
Which means I need to recompile shaders again. But that's the graphics, that's the performance. It really is not very good, and this is a very common theme with Unreal Engine 5 games. Good luck running this on your system. It is crazy. But let's more hone into something more specific.
I think another big problem is it's getting too confusing to run games on our systems. Like, I don't know what half the settings do, and they don't seem to do anything.
About Stalker 2, because this franchise is super known for the immersiveness and the world building, and how the NPCs and AIs act against you in the game to really feel immersed into the systems. Yeah, this game has some issues with that. For example, here, these guys are holding this other dude hostage on the ground here, and they wanted me to find that guy's stash in this like little warehouse thing here. So I found the stash, and I was like, okay, I just want to go check the other one to make sure I actually found the correct one. So I walked over to the other one across the little aisle here, and they started shooting me because they thought I was running away with the goods already. Some things are just unclear. I don't know how I would have known that they would start shooting me immediately, but that's what happened. AI in the game is kind of wild. Like, they feel kind of janky for some reason. They just know where you are, like, at all times. Like, I feel like I just barely peek out, and even though I'm like hidden in like a bush or something, they still find me and they still shoot me, and it's just not fun. There's some cool things about the AI in the game is they won't just like run straight at you and try to shoot you in your face. No, they will actually try to surround you and attack you from different sides and kind of like flank you like how a real like military team would. Or the mutants that are in the game, like the monsters and stuff, they will attack you more like wild animals than what, you know, just a game would normally just throw enemies at you. And it's interesting to see that the world itself is just fighting amongst itself at times.
I want to see somebody recreate Fallout New Vegas in this new Stalker engine with some mods. That'd be amazing.
They're fighting something else, honestly. Maybe they weren't even fighting me. Like, you can just find two.
The audio is what's gonna take me out of it. They're gonna have to do some stuff about the audio, because audio takes me out of games. I don't care much about the visual stuff. I can get past that. The audio, though, if my gun starts shooting and no audio comes out, I'm done. Like, I ain't playing that. I'm gonna reload it to fix it, and if that don't fix it, I ain't playing no more.
Clans fighting each other randomly, and you could just like third party them like it's Fortnite. It's kind of neat to see that happening every now and then, but at the same time, I have a feeling that the older Stalker games with the older AIs in the game were probably more sophisticated than the one in this game. Does that come from Unreal Engine 5? Does it come from this studio who used to use their own custom engine to make their game? Does it come from them being less experienced in this new one having to translate the AI, that one of the most important parts about Stalker as a franchise, over to Unreal Engine 5? Things being lost in translation here. Is it really a good move to switch over to this engine when you have something that's so unique to your specific franchise?
Yeah, I think they could have built upon their old engine. Even if the game felt like an older game, I probably would have liked it a lot more. I just don't like Unreal Engine. I'm still gonna really enjoy this game, and it's one of the better Unreal games, but still, I hope the next one they make, if they make a next one, is not gonna be on Unreal and they use their own engine. But I don't see that happening.
And don't get me wrong, like, I think they've done a very solid job. The
True.
AI in this game is definitely more
True.
deep than.
Yeah, and they did it all through a war. So, like, hats off to them. I'm not taking my hat off right now, but hats off to them.
And most other games that are out there. I think it's funny that I've had tons of crashes in this game, and whenever it crashes, it shows Unreal Engine 5, you know, the crash reporter thing. Isn't that so cool? I mean, it just like shoves it in your face all the time that this game is UE5. Like, the actual gameplay in itself isn't that buggy, but just trying to change your resolution in the game makes it crash sometimes. Let's see if we can do 1440p. Oh. 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 The hell is happening? What the hell is happening, boys? What the what? It's the game. Older games, did they release with as many bugs? Is this game getting too complicated for them at this point and they just couldn't cover all their bases? I mean, obviously,
I think that is a big problem, that games are getting too complicated and they don't need to be. Like, I don't care that this bug crawling around on the ground has a whole life outside of me playing this game. I don't care. Why do they put things like that in this game? I don't care that if you zoom in to the sidewalk, you can see every single little pebble on the sidewalk. Do not care. Like, sure, for tech demos and stuff, maybe. That's cool stuff. But when I'm actually playing, I don't care about any of that stuff. Unless I'm actually looking at it to be like, to showcase it, to be like, oh yeah, see this cool thing, and then I'm never going to look at it again.
being so flexible and the graphics being good does mean that the game kind of runs like shit, and also the AI in the game is kind of just a side grade. Is all this stuff just inexperience with Unreal Engine 5? Is it just growing pains switching to the engine, or is this not something that should have happened in the first place? At the same time, though, I think it's clear that at a smaller studio like CSG Global, I don't think the game would look the way that it does if Unreal Engine 5 didn't exist. Like, I don't think the studio would have the tools capable to make a game.
True. Unreal Engine 5, great. I love it. I love Unreal Engine 5. It's the game companies that I hate that are using it. They're using too much. They're using it too much. Every game's got it.
Like this. Some studios wouldn't be able to make games like they do, say like Black Myth Wukong. That game is built in Unreal Engine 5 and it looks good. It's really solid and everything. And that is a smaller
Also looks like it's made in Unreal Engine 5.
studio as well, or at least when they started. Built it on Unreal Engine 5 and it gave them the tools to make something as crazy of a project as they did there. Giving devs access to this tool is really important. And we see all the issues with Stalker 2 is like Unreal Engine 5 is definitely not a magic bullet, and it starts to make you wonder why all these other studios out here are switching to UE5 as their engine. I'm gonna tell you, Microsoft here, like Halo, UE5 ain't gonna save that game. So this is
True. I don't know what they're even thinking there. rebranding the studio so people get that sour 343 taste out of their mouth. That's not gonna work either. Like, no, that game's done. Like, this is their last chance. No, their last game was their last chance. This one is like nail in the coffin. If this one ain't good, it's over for everybody. They're gonna have Halo would be done. It's just gonna go the ways of Tony Hawk, and just like, you know, games like that just they kept going and kept going until they couldn't anymore.
Why I think everyone is switching to UE5, and you guys are probably gonna be like, oh duh. And the first reason is being able to achieve photorealistic graphics in a game is a lot more doable for a lot of studios, because Epic, you know, with all their Fortnite funding behind the scenes and everything, Epic is doing most of that work for these development studios, which allows them to put work, hopefully, towards what actually makes the game good. We're going to talk about in a little bit why that might not really be the case. But there's another side of photorealism. It's really good marketing for a game. If your game looks really good in a trailer, I mean, nowadays it's starting to get a little oversaturated with.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Every game looks the same. They're all trying to look like real life, and it's just not working out. It's not working out. Nobody wants to play real life games anymore because there are too many of them.
All of the Unreal Engine 5 games, they all look visually pretty photorealistic and stunning. There's another side too with Nanite and Lumen, the two big technologies in Unreal Engine 5. They do save developers a lot of time. Like, Nanite allows them to not have to fuss with LODs, level of details, all that nerd shit. And Lumen also allows just the world to look like it's lighting itself like the real world. Like, I don't think Stalkers 2's like world environment and everything would look as good as it does without having this real-time lighting system. The next main reason though is Unreal Engine. It's industry standard now. Like, it's getting very popular. We see all of the game studios switching to it, and this really does mean a few things, because these studios, they can hire people that have Unreal Engine experience. Like, people actually for game development might be being taught in school to use Unreal Engine. Pretty freaking crazy. Kind of the dark side of this.
Yeah, we need more engines. We need more engines. We need more game companies to make their own engines so we can use them. I think a big problem that game companies do is they create their engine and then don't leave it open for people to use. Bethesda does. Bethesda leaves their engine open to use. I like their engine, actually. A lot of people bitch about it, but at least they're not doing Unreal Engine. At least they're still sticking to their guns and doing something original. And I like the way their engine works. It's just the bugs that are in it and what they've done to it recently. They need to definitely refine some things. Make it not so like Unreal Engine-y. I think they're trying to copy Unreal Engine too much with it. And that's a big problem that Bethesda's having.
Is contracting work. So these studios, you know, if they want to save some money, they could contract out a lot of their work for their games, because it uses Unreal Engine, it's pretty standard, to companies that, you know, don't pay their workers as much. We're just gonna save some money as the company, you know. But one good side of it, because so many people use Unreal Engine, is there's just tons of resources available for it. If you run into a problem, somebody's probably already solved it. I think what a lot of people also don't take into account is not just the graphics and UE that makes it really good for games, but super impressive is how smooth Unreal Engine can just make a giant open world. Say like with Stalker 2. This is just a giant open world in the game. It's pretty seamless. The lighting system helps a lot with that, which I know you're gonna start yelling at me right now. It's like, oh, Unreal Engine has transversal stutter, and wherever you go to like a new loading zone in the game, then you have a little bit of a lag spike. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You know, it depends how the developers spread out the zones so you don't get them all the time. We've seen a lot of games that look super samey, like they just look photorealistic.
Yep.
It looks like they all use assets, like the same assets or something like that. But at the end of the day,
I don't even really think it's the assets. I think it's the colors and lighting, and just the all around how it feels when you move around a character.
Unreal Engine is clearly a very versatile base to build off of. Epic makes this engine, and yes, this is capable of photorealism, but Epic's own main game, Fortnite, isn't photorealistic. So we can clearly see that this
Yeah, but it definitely has that trying to be as realistic as possible through a cartoon style. That's definitely what they're doing with that, and everybody's copying it.
This is capable of a lot more. Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero is built in Unreal Engine 5 as well. And I do have a list of games here that are built in Unreal Engine.
That is a good example of a game that really transcends the Unreal Engine, because nobody could really tell that was an Unreal Engine game. It was a Dragon Ball game.
4, which was also trying to achieve photorealism. These games are stylized, like Valorant was built in Unreal Engine 4, Sea of Thieves as well, Borderlands 3, Stellar Blade 2 is kind of more photorealistic, but that game does have some style to it. And all these games were...
Borderlands 3 didn't feel like Borderlands though. That was the problem with that. It felt like it was halfway Borderlands, halfway an Unreal game.
Unreal Engine 4, and I think as UE5 kind of matures and more developers have experience with it and how to like use it uniquely, it's gonna just get better and better over time, I would think. Even though right now we're just seeing a lot of sameness and a lot of...
I think we're about to get a lot more games that are like retro games where things just don't work quite like they're supposed to, but that's how they're supposed to work. I love that. I love when we make like Bloodborne demastered stuff like that, or the demakes.
Photorealism, it's like, oh boy, this again. Did I say like 3 or 4 main reasons? I don't really know, but I think it's pretty obvious why a lot of studios are switching to using this engine. But I think so many studios,
because it's cheap and easy,
are switching that it's scary. Epic is going to control a lot of the games that are out there based on the engine. It could definitely lead to people being less creative in the industry. We're seeing that right now where all the games look like samey. It could have a ton of problems too. Like with Stalker 2, I think we see a studio that is so unique switching over to an engine pretty different and not tailor built for their game. I think you can see in a lot of ways where they have issues in the game. Where is this going to go long term? Are games really in fear of being good anymore? Are we just gonna not be able to run games anymore? That's my biggest thing too, is like it's so hard to...
It's all about money. People don't want to take risks because they risk their money. That's what the problem is, and everything's become so expensive, even though it hasn't really. They've made it expensive because we gotta make this Pebble as extremely realistic as possible.
Run these stinking games, and if you don't want to upscale, it's like you can't really like make it run on your system. It just isn't gonna work. So maybe we'll see over time if UE gets more optimized. What is tough too is Stalker 2 has a lot of these problems, but I do enjoy the game. Like I get immersed in it. There has issues that frustrate the f out of me. This shit is actually so f***ing stupid. They hit very quickly, and you don't have like a dodge key. Like, how do you get away from them? I don't understand. Hopefully, this doesn't ruin games, but I'm not 100% sure. I think at the end of the day, though, even if UE5 is taking over all the games that are being made, all the studios are switching to it. At the end of the day, and I think it's more than ever being shown, that we get to pick what games succeed. A AAA studio can't just throw a game into our face and with marketing power that we're gonna buy it. It doesn't work like that. Look at like Dragon Age the Veilguard.
Yeah, people are making more money making fun of your shit games and shit decisions now. So like, I mean, people are not listening to the reviewers anymore. People are listening to people like us, like ourselves. I want to listen to a guy who has the same mindset that I do about video games tell me which video games are good or not. That's what I want. I don't want somebody I don't know to write an article about a game that I think was probably going to be a 10 out of 10. They give it a 7 out of 10. And the game that I think is a 2 out of 10, they give it 10 out of 10. I'm not listening to those people anymore. I'm going to listen to the guy that's going to make fun of those people and tell me what games are actually good.
Something like that. It's like a lot of people don't really care about it, and we just didn't buy it. Even if everything's switching to it, does it really matter? Because, you know, we're gonna end up picking the games that win. In the end, though, Epic is in a great situation. Epic is still making money. Let me know what you think about this whole situation, though. You can even run the game. Or are you waiting for patches or a sale?
Epic is making money right now because everybody's like jumping on board and using it. But what happens when it sours And now it's a bad thing that everybody's using Unreal Engine. Everybody hops off and they lose so much money all at once. It'll happen. It's going to happen if everybody jumps to it. More engines need to be created. Epic needs to be pushing for more engines to be created, or they're going to lose theirs, because that's how it's going to go. Because too many people are going to jump on board, and too many people aren't going to want to play games that are like every other game anymore.